everyone. My name is Jamie Lindown, and I'm here with Trachty Building Systems, and we're going to talk about another webinar in our continuing series about self-storage development. This one's about trying to get your final green light to be able to build your self-storage project. If you watched my previous webinar about finding land, a lot of things I talk about in that is the correct zoning. If you do have the correct zoning, it's going to be much easier to pull your building permit and be able to start actual construction of your self-storage. As I've said earlier, the hardest two things you have to do is one, find the land to let you build on, and especially the land that the town or city will allow you to build on. That is not easy. In some areas it is, but a lot is hard. So, if you do have one that has proper zoning, you'll still need to get your site plan approved. You don't just normally walk in there unless the town approves your site plan. Now, when you look at your site plan, they will want to make sure it complies with a number of things. First of all, you're going to have to show them that you have your water drainage plan, which I had talked about in your site plan development. You're going to have to make you conform to all the setbacks. They may ask you for a landscaping plan. You got to make sure the fire marshal is happy. That's going to be like the driveway distances around the building, that you're making sure they have turning radius. You might have to have fire hydrants. Depending on what building code and how big your building is, whether you sprinkler or not. And we've talked before about how to try to build it without sprinklers as much as possible. Okay? If you're going to have a bathroom, you'll need a sanitary permit, or you're going to have to tie into their sanitary system that'll be with the town. Sometimes you need an electrical permit, sometimes you don't. There could be a parking permit. But one of the bigger, even in any smallest town possible, the biggest thing that people run into is make sure they can get the driveway access that they want. Because a lot of times it's not the town that approves it, it's the Department of Transportation for your state. And that can be totally different entities. You can be totally permitted, but you have to wait for that driveway permit. So when you're actually applying for your building permit, you will need to develop a plan of the buildings. You're going to have to know the height, normally the direction of water, whether it's a gable, lean-to building, what roof pitch is. You're going to need that. You'll need a stamped set of drawings. And stamp means that there's an engineer's seal on the plans that says it's all conforming to the state and local codes. And Trachty does that for you, and other building companies do too. And you want to, there's a fee for that. You want to order that as soon as possible when you know, so you have those plans to make sure you can get it approved. Then, of course, you're going to have to start paying fees. And I'm going to just show you an example here. Here's a typical permit where you have to fill out who's a contractor, who is your electrical contractor, if you're going to have electric. In some states, you have to have a general contractor. In others, like Wisconsin here, we can act as our own general contractor. And then there'll be a separate fee for that. Okay? Submitted with this plan, you will normally need to have a site plan submitted. In the state of Wisconsin, we actually have to have the site plan sealed. And you notice in the top right-hand corner, that is the seal from our engineer who's stamping it. Combined with that, you will have to have a permit drawings, which could range from minimum of 8 pages for one building. These plans have to show a foundation plan, building plan, elevation plan, has to show a roof framing plan, typical wall details, very standard that each one of the different types of companies, if you would build a wood building or block building or metal building, they would have to conform. And there's normally a table of contents on it. And one of the biggest parts that you would see on this sheet if you ever blew it up is what's your snow load, wind load, and make sure it corresponds. Then they'll give you a building permit. The building permit you want to put up on the wall, out the wall, but posted outside, that for you can get started. Now that, if you're the easiest situation where it is, zoned right, that's pretty much the process. But now we're going to go to the harder part. The CUP, conditional use permit. When they ask for that, the games change and it gets much harder. And we're going to talk about that. What does CUP means? This is, if you read the words in front of you, I'm not going to read it out loud, but it's where you have to conform with every ordinance and every item that they bring up from the town planning board to be able to correspond whether you can build in this municipality. And it's not always uniform, but they are going to have some written documentation of what their expectations are. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is make sure you read them and understand them before you pursue trying to get your conditional use permit. Now, in my previous webinar, I talked about the zoning. And in this example here in Topeka, Kansas, if you are in the type of self-storage where if you were in the commercial zoning, you would have to get you see C and S's there, which are special or conditional use. Special use is easier to get than conditional use. And then the one to the right is allowed by right. If it's allowed by right, it's a menu storage you can be done. So you got to make sure you understand. So I'm now pretending we're building in Topeka, Kansas, and we are trying to get our conditional use permit. Okay? So I have this land under contract. First thing you're going to want to do is have an informal meeting with the land planning person. It might be somebody in the town to discuss it. First of all, you would want to come in informed and give them some idea of what you wanted to do. If you had a plan, a rough sketch of what you would have, that's better than just coming in and chatting a lot of times. So what happens is you'll want to listen to their concerns and what their objections may be, what they like or not like about it, and do not try to put them on the spot. These people will never say, yes, you can get it, no, you can't. A lot of times they'll say, no, you can't, okay, unless you do this. You will have to really pursue trying to address whatever issues they have. Now, when you have this informal meeting, okay, I did one myself with the head person. Then later on, I could be 2 out of the 6 other people. The other ones would not meet with me, but I met them informally to talk about what they liked or didn't like about the idea of building a self-storage on this property. Okay? Because what I'm trying to get at is when you are in front of a town meeting, these township people have a very rigid formality in how they have to run their meetings and how they have to put out concerns and handle customer issues. The person applying for it, and also what their governing people are who come to the meeting. So a member of them are filmed now. So things cannot be taken out of context. So the more you have all this filming and everything else, it is a very rigid process. And so if you can already go in there with a lot of the ideas that is not a formal process to get their ideas, you are going to do so much better. I'm not stopping with this quoting because you have to understand the process. So each municipal code will write what you have and what a conditional use means. Okay? Don't assume anything. Please read them, okay? You have to understand them. And my suggestion, the helpful hint is actually watch a meeting, go to a meeting, to make sure. For example, tonight, for myself, I am doing a Zoom meeting for my own addition to my son's site. We're having a Zoom meeting, and the Zoom meeting has a bunch of people going to be on there. And you have to watch how everything happens, because if you've never been to one, you have absolutely no idea what you're walking into, because it is kind of crazy what you listen to, what they listen to, and you got to understand how you're going to, work your way through the process to satisfy them all, because they can stop the process. And just like a side note here, back into the municipal code, they might have other items, like here's one in Columbus, Wisconsin. They had a requirement for parking. So if you know what the requirement for parking is, you better have that already on your plan before you submit, because they will bring all these up with the other questions that you have. Next, when you apply for this meeting, you might be able to get one with the zone change. It depends on the community. One meeting where you talk to them, and then the next one will go for public hearing. So when they go for public hearing, they are going to send notices to a certain distance away from your site. It might be 1 mile, might be 2 miles, or might be much shorter, maybe only 2,000 feet, that all of the neighbors get to come in and say if they like their plan or not. And what is a major problem is that the first time they get this letter shouldn't be the first time they hear about it. You should have already tried to contact them and tell them your plan and understand their concerns, to address them before you have the meeting. Because I have witnessed multiple times that one here in our town here, they had 50 people come up against a self-storage facility. And it blew the town board up, and they were denied on the spot. So you want to make sure you handle this beforehand so you're not surprised. And if you're a person that thinks this, which is the old way of thinking, it's my land, I should be able to do what I want, you could be in deep trouble. Yes, it's your land, but that does not mean you can do what you want with it. So another thing that people talk to us about is, yeah, I need a zone change. I think I'll be ready to build in 2 months from now. No. A lot of times these, whether it's a zone change or a CUP meeting, could take typically 3 meetings is a mere minimum. They can take much longer than that. And if you do not follow the rules and continue to not follow the rules, it could take years upon years, okay? My rules record is 8 years to get approval on a project that happened in Ohio. The problem was it's not all on the customer, who was doing it. Well, a lot was on the customer because he failed to satisfy the town, and then the restrictions kept getting worse. And he wishes he would go back in time, because the rules keep changing every year, especially building plan and other changes. Now, here is an example of what can happen. Here's a piece of land that was done, or is not correctly zoned, needs a conditional use permit. What can happen is they will have some third party do an inspection of your plan and then write up all of the things that may correspond or may not correspond. With this particular site, they had 36 items they needed addressed, from landscaping to making sure every I is dotted, T is crossed. Now in this situation here, my guess is this means that they do not want to approve it, okay? So they're putting up as many hurdles as possible to make sure you go away. And how you handle these situations is you make sure you address every single one before you come back to the next meeting. Because if you address half of them, they don't even care. They're going to bring up all the ones you do not approve. Okay? So, read my 3 things. Read what you have to do. Hire somebody who understands it if you do not, and make sure they can move it forward. Now, I touched on earlier, let's say you're looking at a piece of land that needs a zone change. Now, what happens with this? It makes it probably quadruply harder than a conditional use permit, okay? Because there is all kinds of roadblocks the township could have. Now, I worked on a project which is only the second zone change in my county that ever happened to allow mini storage that I know of. And this is the blue circle, you see our purple circle. The red circles, the red ones, are the ones that were used by right, and you had to get a zone change. And when you actually asked for a zone change, you know, there was multiple items they had to do. First, there was a township comprehensive plan that is written. The first thing we did was write a letter to say how this addresses the township plan. There was wetlands on the property that you had to fix. We had to engineer the site. We had to show an elevation, electrical, and landscaping. By far, bar none, their biggest concern. And they also wanted me to prove that there was enough need, which was fairly easy done because this is an area that's hard to build. So it was easy to get that done. So the comprehensive plan, how is that? Well, they talk about it. And so the way I have always been able to move forward with the sites that I've built is I read the comprehensive plan, and I answer the comprehensive plan, and make sure every time I address the committee, I am reading what their rules are and telling them how I comply. Okay? This is what your rule is. This is how I'm complying. This is what your rule is for land or architecture. This is how we're complying, and went through it. Okay. This land also has wetland issues, so we had to get what's called wetland delineation, which means that you had to get rid of these wetlands. I had to buy other wetlands, and so that was a long process, you know. These purple rings or blue rings are the where these wetlands were in my plan. So that took another 6 months to be able to get these delineated, which is all a part of before they give you a zone change, they had to do that. Then to make the matters worse, once the wetlands were also eliminated, then I had to get another rezone of the wetlands to the correct new zoning. Another whole layer and $950 spent. So you need this engineered site plan. A lot of times with the engineered site plan, it's going to show you where your water goes, but you're also, in many areas of the country, they have very bad soil. In Texas, they have expansive soil, which you have to get a soil test to prove that it's going to fit. You know, it's going to work. This can even come in, even in the CUP. If there's an engineer on that board, he's going to ask all these types of questions. Okay? But a lot of times what they worry about is the exterior look. You will normally have to hire an architect to do sort of some of an elevation plan to show you what it's going to look like, and a landscape engineer to do a landscape plan for you. And you will have to submit both of them. Now, when you go for a zone change, they can bring up any item they want. Like they could say, we do not want to see any doors. We do not want any outside parking. We want only masonry look. Okay, these types of things. Now, a lot of the newer upgrades people have done with self-storage to dress them up, especially the multi-stories, where you are making it super pretty. The townships have actually been more receptive because the look is different. Now, the next webinar that I'm going to do, I'm going to explore that item into great detail of what you can do in architecturally to help you comply with some of the stuff I'm talking about today. That's going to be done next month. That's the next one in the series. So, you know, so with this zone change that I tried to get, well, I was able to get, the overriding factor was this town was sick of losing all their land to the city of Madison, Wisconsin. And they wanted it to keep their town from disintegrating, and they wanted to get a tax base. And so you know, there was a couple of issues that there was no sewer there. Why they allowed self-storage? Because they couldn't have apartments or something else because they only could have one sewer. That aligned it in a self-storage favor because you only needed one bathroom. And they really wanted that property tax, to be honest, because they know they can property tax it a lot. But the danger of a zone change is that they have carte blanche to ask for a whole bunch of things. So when we went to the planning department, here is the office they wanted. They're a farm community. They wanted a farm look, and I call it wedding chapel mini storage. They like this look, and they're super ecstatic. 2 of the women drive by this road every day when they go to work. So they were very concerned about the look, very concerned about the landscaping. And so a lot of times you as an owner, after the 8th meeting I'm in, you just say, yes, okay, that's a great idea. We'll do this, we'll do this. You just got to make sure you understand what you're saying yes to, the cost consequences. And that's why, back to the next webinar, talking about some of the architecture, people talk to us, I want to make it really nice, but it can't cost too much money, okay? Because the township does not care how much money it costs. It has nothing to do with anything. As I mentioned with the landscape plan, they're going to be very cognizant of type of trees, which trees. Basically, because of this site, they wanted to almost eliminate it so you can't even be seen with so many trees. And then there was also arguments whether they wanted deciduous trees or coniferous trees, and they wanted coniferous trees where the retention basin was, because they didn't want leaves falling in the retention basin. They wanted the other trees where they wouldn't be falling in the retention basin. So we listened to at least 2 whole meetings all about it. And so then they also gave us ideas, and this is why, you're opening Pandoras Box, which trees they wanted, which ones they didn't. I didn't care, whatever you pick, so that is a huge thing that people fight, but I also think you'll make your money back, because the prettier you make it look, you can charge more money later because people will come there more, want to come there more. And so this is just a view of, look at how close the trees are together. In 10 years from now, those will be sky high and totally covering everything. So here is what you need. You need an incredibly strong stomach to be able to smile and watch as they are forcing you to spend tens of thousands of dollars on their idea. Okay? That sometimes a lot of people have a hard time doing that. It takes a very long time. It's not something that goes quickly. You better have plenty of money because it can take a lot, because whatever cost you think it'll be more. And a lot of times with a lot of cities, they make you have all of the plans, every single plan done before they'll say yes or no. And to get each one of these plans completely done could be easy in excess of $100,000 to get all the plans and permits, and then they could still tell you no. I was just at a convention last week that we had in our industry, and somebody was just shut down, and they had spent $115,000 before they got shut down. And you think it's unjust, but this is what we're in. And as I've always said, this is the hardest part of the business, is to get it approved, to get all of the things in order for you to build. Now, what we hear all the time is, I'm not going to have a problem. Oh, I know anybody. I didn't have a problem last time. Hey, man, even if you built 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the games continue to change, and there's a lot of things out there. These are just basically, a lot of the problems are you, the customer. You, the guy trying to build it, you're not listening to what they're telling you, and until they hit you with a baseball bat. Okay? Now, no matter, even if you get approved, there can be hurdles that cost you more money. I'm just going to give you a couple examples here in the end. For example, a landmine that you might have is, hey, this fire department comes, we want another fire hydrant. A lot of times fire hydrants only go 400 feet. So if you're deeper than 400 feet, they want a fire hydrant back of the property. You didn't even think about that. But here it might be 50,000 or even more money. My favorite one in California that happens is that they might mandate that you need sprinklers, okay? And here's a customer in Sonoma, California that needed sprinklers. The problem is there's no water at his site. So he actually had to have two of these big, huge mounds, these two big containers held in to hold the water for the sprinkler system. You know, huge amount of money. But whatever hurdle that you are going by and you are going through to be able to build your mini storage, that the guy behind you is probably going to have more hurdles. This customer needed 34 permits to build his mini storage. Now, my son's one that we built in Verona that I showed you, we needed 24 permits to build ours. And once you get the permits, what happens is you have to show them and denote them before you can begin construction. Because after this webinar, we're going to talk about the look and what you want your buildings to look like. But after the next one after that, we're going to talk about the actual construction of it. And so hopefully I've given you some hints on how to handle your conditional use or trying to get through the particular system. And there might be somebody in town who does this, and it's worth it. And they might charge $200 an hour or whatever their numbers are, but it might be worth it because you'll save time. Now, I don't know if we have any questions. I think there's one already here that somebody had sent. You know, there's a lot of objections that the towns will have that they can bring up. They might not like mini storage because they don't create any jobs. And that's a hard one to get by because normally there's only 2 or 3 people. For example, U-Haul gets around this because with the U-Haul business, they can say they employ 20 people. So how are you going to employ 20 people? You might have to put offices on the front and make a mixed use. A lot of communities want a mixed use, and then they'll allow self-storage in the back of the property. Normally, you know, you may or may want to do it, but maybe your only choice to be able to approve. You know, they always come up with the same questions about crime and theft and traffic. Okay? The trafficked one, there are some information given by the Self-Storage Association that talks about the traffic use in a typical self-storage, which is typically 1 car per day per unit. And so it is much less than what they deem. So there's documents you can have that you can use in your argument. Crime, they worry about meth labs or drugs or dead bodies because there's bad press. And that's why you push the security aspect of your new facility. That's why gates and cameras. Gates, controlled access gates with cameras, because, you know, petty crime has decreased with all these cameras because you can get caught. And so that should be a part of your presentation to avoid those concerns because they come up every single time. So is there any other questions that we might have on? But so if there's any other particular items that you might have, remember you can always reach out to Trocti and myself personally and send us an email to Ask the Expert at our website, and we'll try to get back to you with any particular questions you have. So I want to thank you for watching this webinar, and if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a ring. Thank you, and hope you're successful with your self-storage project.